The first alerts hit Wall Street terminals at 9:02 a.m. EST. Breaking. U.S. announces 100% tariffs on all Chinese imports. Within seconds, the world began to shake. Bitcoin collapsed $15,000 in an hour. The Nasdaq triggered a market-wide circuit breaker. Shipping routes from Shenzhen went dark as freight companies froze outgoing orders. Factories that had been running non-stop for Christmas production powered down mid-shift. By lunchtime, global investors watched $2 trillion vanish from the markets. And then the second headline appeared. Trump cancels planned APEC meeting with Xi Jinping, no reason to talk. That single sentence detonated across the world like an electronic bomb. In Beijing, the foreign ministry's emergency lights flickered on. In Tokyo, traders screamed as the yen spiked. In San Francisco, crypto exchanges went into meltdown. CNN's anchor put it bluntly. This isn't a trade dispute anymore. This is economic warfare. For the first time in years, the word war didn't sound exaggerated. At 11:45 a.m., U.S. military satellites recorded something unusual. A convoy of Chinese DF-26 missile transporters moving under cover of darkness in Fujian province, facing Taiwan. No announcement, no press release, just movement. The narrator's voice drops low, almost a whisper. It started as a tariff, but wars don't always begin with gunfire. Sometimes they begin with attacks. It was supposed to be a routine White House briefing. Reporters gathered, half expecting another comment about border security or oil prices. Instead, the doors opened, and Donald J. Trump walked in, wearing his trademark blue tie, face expressionless. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? How has this new U.S.-China tension affected your life, your business, your investments? Type your city in the comments below. Let's see how far this moment reaches across the world. Because what's happening right now isn't just a policy dispute, it's a global tremor. And it started shaking first, in Beijing. Behind him stood the Treasury Secretary and Commerce Secretary, both carrying folders marked China, Emergency Measures. Good morning, Trump said. America has been robbed for decades. That ends today. He paused for effect, then read the line that sent markets into free fall. Effective immediately, the United States will impose a 100% tariff on all Chinese imports. Every product, every sector, no exceptions. Silence. Even the press corps froze. For a moment, the only sound was camera shutters clicking like rifle fire. Then he added, China's been stealing our jobs, our technology, our future. We're done being nice. Within 10 minutes, Bloomberg terminals turned blood red. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana down double digits. Dow Jones plunged 1,600 points. Gold shot past $20,800 an ounce. Financial networks cut to live feeds of traders shouting into phones. The screens flashed, markets in panic. Meanwhile, the Chinese yuan collapsed to its lowest level in 5 years. Exporters canceled shipments overnight, fearing American customs seizures. In Shenzhen, an electronics manufacturer live-streamed his assembly line as it shut down. We can't pay workers if shipments don't move, he said. If America stops buying, we stop eating. By mid-afternoon, Beijing issued a brief statement calling the tariffs a hostile act disguised as trade. Then silence. No further comment, no negotiation invitation, just a quiet tightening of China's information networks. State TV replaced all foreign news with patriotic documentaries. Social media posts mentioning tariff war were removed within minutes. Yet in the shadows, activity surged. U.S. intelligence intercepted encrypted chatter suggesting an emergency meeting inside Zhongnanhai, the Chinese leadership compound. The topic: national economic defense measures. At the same time, the Pentagon noticed spikes in Chinese military satellite transmissions, exactly the pattern seen during the 2022 Taiwan drills. That evening, the president doubled down on social media. 100% tariffs mean 100% jobs for America. China has had a free ride for too long. We're taking back what's ours. Supporters cheered, markets bled. On CNBC, one analyst said it out loud. This is the most aggressive trade policy in modern history. It's not about commerce anymore. It's about control. Then came the rumors. China had halted all exports of rare earth metals, gallium, germanium, and lithium, critical for US weapons and AI chips. Defense contractors panicked. Supply chains froze. A senior US official, speaking off record, admitted, "If they cut us off completely, half our defense industry stops within weeks." Meanwhile, European leaders scrambled to mediate. Germany's chancellor urged restraint. Japan quietly aligned with Washington. But nobody knew where the limit was. As night fell over the Pacific, one more data point appeared on US Air Force reconnaissance feeds. Unusual troop movements along China's eastern coast. Logistics units, fuel convoys, radar vehicles. Nothing overtly hostile, but organized, purposeful, coordinated. The same pattern analysts had seen before every major Chinese exercise. At the National Security Council, one advisor whispered a question that hung in the air. What if this isn't just trade retaliation? What if they're getting ready for something else? No one answered. Only the screens kept flashing red, and the price of Bitcoin kept falling. The sun had already set over Tiananmen when motorcades began arriving at the heavily guarded gates of Zhongnanhai. Inside the compound, the air smelled of black tea and fear. Xi Jinping sat at the head of a long lacquered table, surrounded by his most trusted ministers. The mood was not anger, it was calculation. Defense officials briefed the room on the U.S. provocation. Economic advisors warned that the 100% tariff could wipe out up to $600 billion in export revenue within a year. But the conversation quickly turned from finance to survival. "This isn't trade," said one Politburo member. "This is containment." Xi listened silently, his eyes fixed on a printed map of the South China Sea marked with red circles. U.S. carrier groups, submarine patrol zones, satellite arcs. "If they want to choke us," he finally said, "we prepare to breathe underwater." The meaning was clear: self-reliance, militarization, endurance. By dawn, orders went out to multiple military districts. Satellite imagery captured fuel convoys heading toward coastal bases. At Hainan Island, naval yards switched to 24-hour shifts. In Fujian province, new radar installations lit up like fireflies on American surveillance feeds. Officially, Beijing said nothing. But foreign correspondents in Hong Kong noticed something subtle. Flights to Xiamen quietly suspended for airspace adjustments. Chinese social media users began posting strange videos. Endless trains of green military trucks moving through misty countryside, each tagged with a single number, 401. Those clips disappeared within minutes. At the same time, Chinese state television aired a patriotic special titled "Steel Will, the Spirit of National Defense." Every break ended with a slogan, "Prepare for difficulties, stand together." While soldiers moved, economists retaliated. The Ministry of Commerce halted exports of lithium, gallium, and rare earths, the metals that make the West's batteries, fighter jets, and AI chips possible. Overnight, U.S. defense contractors scrambled. A leaked email from Lockheed Martin, verified by Reuters, read, "We are assessing supply chain impacts immediately. Critical materials shortfall possible within 90 days." Beijing's message was surgical. "You can build missiles, but not without our minerals." To stabilize the domestic market, the People's Bank of China quietly injected billions of yuan in liquidity. Simultaneously, state-owned banks bought gold in record quantities. a shield against the falling dollar. Inside chat rooms of Chinese investors, a new phrase trended, the Golden Wall. But for ordinary citizens, patriotism couldn't pay rent. In Guangdong, a factory manager told a local news site, "We lived through COVID shutdowns, chip shortages, and power cuts. But this could end us." On Weibo, users posted sarcastic memes, cargo ships labeled "Made in Silence." By morning, every meme was deleted. Yet one message slipped through before censorship caught it. "When two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers." That evening, U.S. reconnaissance satellites recorded a pattern eerily familiar to analysts. DF-26 missile launchers moving from inland hangars to open positions near the coast. A handful of Y-20 transport aircraft took off from Xi'an, destination unknown. Electronic intelligence picked up encrypted chatter using a frequency set last seen during the 2022 Taiwan blockade exercise. To the public, nothing appeared different. But inside the Pentagon, the map of the South China Sea began to glow crimson. A senior U.S. analyst, voice trembling, told NBC off-camera, "We're watching a chessboard where both sides think they're just repositioning pieces. The problem is one wrong move, and the board catches fire." At 8 p.m., Beijing time, Xi Jinping appeared on national television. No bluster, no shouting, just a calm, almost fatherly tone. "Certain nations wish to slow China's progress," he said, "but the Chinese nation has endured storms before. We will stand firm, self-reliant, and unafraid." Crowds applauded in public squares. But beneath the applause, many wondered what self-reliant really meant. In Mandarin, that phrase carries an older echo. It was once used during wartime mobilization campaigns. Across the Pacific, the U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet adjusted its routes. The carrier USS Reagan began moving south, shadowed by Chinese drones. Meanwhile, Wall Street analysts debated whether to call it a trade war or a pre-conflict. The truth was simpler. The world had entered a new phase, one without clear rules. "When trade stops," the narrator says quietly, "history shows what always comes next." The world woke up to chaos. Across continents, markets opened red, and headlines screamed words nobody had seen in decades. Trade war escalates. China mobilizes. Bitcoin crashes below 100K. Europe, Asia, and America were no longer watching the same story. They were living it. In Frankfurt, the DAX index fell nearly 8% within hours. Tokyo's Nikkei suffered its steepest single-day drop since the 2008 crash. Even Switzerland, the calm eye of every storm, saw its currency surge so sharply that traders called it the panic franc. And then there was crypto, Ethereum down 30%, Solana in freefall. Analysts on Bloomberg tried to stay calm, but one finally said it out loud. "This is a liquidity crisis born out of fear. Nobody wants to hold risk anymore, not even digital gold." Bitcoin hit $97,000, its lowest in months, as investors fled to physical gold and U.S. Treasury bonds. But even the U.S. bond market trembled because global trust itself was breaking apart. Behind closed doors, the National Security Council met in Washington. Satellite feeds from the Pacific showed Chinese aircraft patterns that mirrored 2022's invasion drills. 3 carrier groups, USS Reagan, USS Lincoln, and USS America, were rerouted toward the Philippine Sea under the label Freedom of Navigation Operations. Meanwhile, at China's Hainan Naval Base, submarine activity spiked. Acoustic sensors picked up multiple Type 094 Jin-class nuclear subs leaving port, heading into deep water. Nobody in the Pentagon called it aggression, but everyone understood what it meant. China was preparing for scenarios beyond trade. A memo leaked that evening read, "PLA movements are defensive but large-scale. Recommend elevated readiness status across Indo-Pacific Command." In Tokyo, Japan's prime minister called an emergency meeting of the Diet. He spoke only 20 words that made global headlines. If trade becomes war, Japan will not stand neutral. South Korea raised its cyber defense level to severe. Australia increased surveillance flights over the South China Sea. The European Union issued a statement urging mutual restraint. But behind the scenes, NATO analysts quietly began simulating escalation timelines. Even Moscow saw opportunity. Russian state media aired triumphant reports that Western unity is cracking, while Iran announced new military cooperation talks with Beijing. The geopolitical chessboard was no longer theoretical. It was alive and moving fast. But beneath the headlines and political speeches were real lives unraveling. In Los Angeles, a logistics worker named Carla watched her shipping company close after Chinese suppliers froze exports. In Shenzhen, a 26-year-old factory technician recorded a video message before his job disappeared overnight. "They told us it's temporary, but we know what temporary means." By the next day, that video had over 10 million views before being removed. In Europe, small businesses that relied on Chinese electronics or textiles suddenly faced ruin. Everywhere, people began asking the same question: how far can this go before something breaks? As panic spread through markets, something darker began happening in the digital realm. U.S. government servers reported a wave of coordinated cyber attacks targeting financial networks and energy grids. Most were contained, but traces led back to IP clusters linked to Chinese state actors. It was the modern version of warning shots, invisible, deniable, but deeply felt. In retaliation, Western intelligence agencies launched counter-operations, jamming suspected Chinese satellite communications for several minutes. Enough to send a signal without starting a war. For ordinary people, it meant power flickers, dropped connections, and unexplained outages. To analysts, it meant something far more alarming. The cyber front had opened. By Friday, the chaos reached Wall Street. Traders whispered about the Friday flush. An internal Goldman Sachs memo described it bluntly. "This is not a correction. This is a controlled burn until it isn't." Global losses topped $5 trillion in less than 72 hours. And amid the chaos, one voice on Fox Business asked the question millions were afraid to hear. If tariffs were the opening move, what's the next one? Nobody answered. At 3 p.m. Washington time, Defense Secretary Tom Cotton entered the Pentagon press room. He spoke for less than 3 minutes. The United States continues to monitor the situation in the Indo-Pacific. We remain committed to stability, to freedom of navigation, and to peace through strength. But behind him, leaked satellite photos told a different story. 3 new runways were visible on small, artificial islands in the South China Sea, built by China, armed with radar domes and missile batteries. Their purpose was unmistakable. As one analyst on CNN said that night, China isn't just defending trade routes, they're drawing battle lines. By Sunday, protests erupted across global cities. In New York, anti-war marches. In Shanghai, small, silent vigils for peaceful trade. In London, a banner reading, "No sanctions, no soldiers." But far from the cameras, inside command centers and encrypted chat rooms, war planning accelerated. Both sides claimed they wanted peace. Both were quietly preparing for war. And somewhere, in a secure facility under Colorado, NORAD radar operators stared at new contacts appearing near Guam, unidentified, fast, and moving east. The screen flickered red. The commander leaned forward and said softly, "It's starting." Is China preparing for war? The question had been whispered for weeks. Now it was being asked on live television. Is China preparing for war? No one wanted to answer, because deep down, every strategist already knew. At 02:17 a.m., Beijing time, U.S. early warning satellites detected dozens of encrypted bursts across China's western provinces, the kind used to coordinate military logistics. Minutes later, Japanese radar picked up long-range transport aircraft flying south in formation. At sea, the USS Reagan reported shadowing by 4 Chinese Type 055 destroyers. Officially, both nations still called it a trade standoff. Unofficially, their navies were staring at each other through gun sights. In underground command centers from Pearl Harbor to Beijing, maps glowed red with blinking icons, tankers, frigates, drones, satellites. Every analyst knew that one misread radar ping, one nervous trigger, could change history. Then came the blackout. On Monday morning, large sections of California's power grid went down for 17 minutes. Simultaneously, Shanghai's financial exchange halted trades after a data integrity breach. Neither side claimed responsibility, but cybersecurity experts traced both to the same digital fingerprint, APT-41, a notorious Chinese state-linked hacker group. Within hours, U.S. Cyber Command activated Operation Sentinel Wave, flooding Chinese servers with fake signals and decoy intrusions. It wasn't destruction, it was a message. We can see you. Across the Pacific, Beijing's Global Times warned that cyber hostilities will invite real-world consequences. Investors panicked again. Gold surged past $3,000. The world had entered a new type of conflict, silent, borderless, deniable. Television turned into a battlefield of its own. Chinese state news aired footage of missile drills set to triumphant music. American networks countered with live feeds of F-35s taking off from Guam, captioned "Readiness Exercise." On social media, AI-generated videos flooded every platform, fake explosions, fake speeches, fake confessions. Nobody could tell what was real anymore. Truth itself became collateral damage. A viral tweet from an anonymous account claimed, "Beijing plans to strike by November." It was fake, but by the time fact-checkers responded, global stock markets had already lost another $1 trillion. In Beijing, Xi Jinping convened what insiders called the Night Council. Only 7 people attended. Military advisors presented satellite images of U.S. carrier groups, economic ministers showed charts of collapsing exports, and intelligence officers warned of sabotage inside China's tech sector. Xi listened quietly, then said one sentence that defined the night. "If the West wants to contain us, we must prove we cannot be contained." That phrase became the new slogan across state media. Factories began producing at wartime speed. Civil defense drills restarted for the first time in 20 years. And somewhere deep inside Sichuan province, engineers were testing a new generation of hypersonic glide vehicles, weapons designed to cross the Pacific in minutes. Back in Washington, the Pentagon issued its firmest statement yet. Defense Secretary Tom Cotton addressed the nation flanked by Joint Chiefs banners. "We do not seek conflict with the People's Republic of China. But make no mistake, the United States will defend its allies, its economy, and its future." Behind him, classified orders had already moved into motion. 3 B-2 Spirit bombers departed White Man AFB under radio silence. A satellite constellation, codenamed Raven Eye, shifted orbit, designed to watch every inch of the Taiwan Strait in real time. The message was unmistakable: deterrence through visibility. Echoes of 1941. Historians began drawing uncomfortable parallels. Economic sanctions, mutual arrogance, miscommunication. The same ingredients that had once turned trade disputes into world wars. Only now, the weapons were faster, smarter, and invisible. A retired admiral said it best during a PBS interview. "The next Pearl Harbor won't come from the sky. It'll come from a login screen." In global cities, fear turned to fatigue. Families stocked food. Corporations moved servers offshore. Crypto traders joked grimly, decentralization just became survival. And yet, amidst the panic, diplomats still tried to talk. A secret meeting took place in Geneva. US and Chinese envoys sitting across a silent table. No press, no handshake. Only a single sentence, shared by both sides. Let's not be the generation that ends history. At 11:47 p.m. Pacific Time, NORAD detected an unidentified launch from the South China Sea. Screens flashed red. For 9 seconds, the world teetered on the edge. Then the alert cleared. It was a weather balloon test. The silence afterward felt heavier than any explosion. Somewhere, a US analyst whispered, "We just rehearsed the end of the world."